Welcome back to the second of our Christmas videos for 2023. We're heading very quickly towards Christmas, and before we hit the start of December, I'm going to talk you through an Advent ring. The wreath itself represents continuous life, and the 4 candles represent hope, joy, peace and love. Quite often you'll see an Advent ring with the 5th candle that's lit on Christmas Eve. But today I'm going to be doing sort of my version of the Advent ring, and I'm going to be using 4 red candles, and I've used the plastic base that you can buy quite successfully from Amazon or eBay or from a florist supplies, and I have linked these in the description box at the end. So if you're not familiar or you haven't been with me before for tutorials, right at the end of the video will be a series of close-up photos and stills of the finished design, and in the description box underneath will be a list of all the flower content, the sundries that I've used, and if possible I link anything that's been used that you can purchase on Amazon, and it's a much easier way of you being able to get hold of any of the products. So I've got some ordinary red candles, tall taper candles, but you can use any candles of your choice. And what I'm going to do is insert them into the foam so that we've got 4 equally spaced apart. Now, lots of European designers will do 4 candles close together. They might be on a separate stand. They could be raised above the framework itself. And you know, you can adapt the style. You could create a symbolic version of the Advent ring, or you can be a little bit more playful, add some accessories and just get inspired by all the very different styles that are around. Now, I'm using a 12-inch Oasis ring. It's been pre-soaked before I started filming, and I've tried, you might have seen me pause then, because I've just noticed that one of my candles has a very strange shape to it. This one here at the front, I think is snapped in the middle. So I didn't pick a very good one out of the box, but you'll get the idea. So we've got 4 candles fairly evenly spaced apart. If you would prefer to put a design like this on the mantelpiece, then you might want to put 4 candles in a row and do a thinner and longer version. I'm also going to include some red berries because I wanted to have a link with the candles, but traditionally an Advent ring would have just had foliage and no accessories at all. Now, I've already prepared myself some small short pieces of greenery. They're a little bit shorter than my hand, and I've got 3 types. I've got Conifer, which is this one here. Then I've got some blue pine, that one with a lovely grey sort of tone to it. And I've also got some of the limier green Pinus Strobus. So really I've got 3 quite contrasting greeneries. If you can only get hold of ivy or conifer from the garden, then use whatever you can get. I like to try and mix my greeneries because I'm a real lover of all different types of foliages. But you can pretty much use any foliage that you can get hold of, whether it's from the garden or whether it's from the florist shop itself. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just randomly going to go around the outside. Now, you could do this in a more patterned form. I've already cut my foliage, and it's just really to speed up the process. I've made sure that any pine needles are removed from the bottom so that I have a clean stem to insert into my foam. And I'm going quite quickly because otherwise it's going to be a very boring video with you sitting and watching me place greenery into the foam. But you can obviously take your time. And all I'm doing initially is going around the outside as close to the plastic rim as I can get. And I've cut the foliage so it's a similar length. It's not perfect and it's not an identical length. I haven't cut it with a ruler. I've just sort of guesstimated how long it needs to be. And what this is doing is creating a really lovely outline shape. At the moment I've only gone halfway round, but you can see all the lovely textures and all the interesting types of greenery. It is a design that takes up quite a lot of foliage, and I often say, if we're making this in class here, select your greenery. When you think you've got enough, add extra again, because it never seems to go very far. It's probably not the cheapest of designs to do if you've got to buy greenery from your florist supplies, because you do need quite a lot. But forage for ivy, you might have eucalyptus in the garden, hebe would work really well. You can of course use holly, although it's quite hard on your hands when you're handling it. And all I've done is gone round the outside. I haven't yet started putting any foliage on the top section. I've gone round the outside, so I've got a fairly even circular shape. And that was easily achieved because I cut my greenery to the same size before I started. Now what I'm going to do with much shorter pieces is go round on the inside. I like to work in this fairly sort of methodical manner, outside and then the inside, and that's probably how I was taught to do this many years ago, and I followed that pattern. I find if you go over the top first, it's very hard to see the edge and it's hard to get an outline shape. So if you want to do the same as me, I think this is the easiest method, but if you've watched another tutorial, they could well do it in a different style. And what you need to do is leave the centre clear so that you have a design that represents an everlasting circle rather than a round sort of posy shape. There needs to be that clear gap there in the centre. And that's my outline. So I've done my inside and I've done the outside. Now I'm going to fill in on the top section, and I'm going to do that in 3 different sort of positions. One I'm going to angle towards the outside, one is going to be in the middle, and then an odd couple are going to be facing more towards the centre. If you've got thin greenery, so if you've got only conifer, so if we look at this piece here, you might want to go round again on the edge to thicken that up. So if I just show you with another piece of greenery, you might want to thicken that up by adding a few more pieces where the thinner types of greenery are. What you don't want to do is pack the greenery in so that there's no space in between, otherwise it'll all fall apart. Your foam will completely disintegrate and there'll be nothing left to hold it all in place. So 1 or 2 finger gaps in between is perfect. And then when you're happy that you've got a good shape on the outside, we're going to start coming up towards the top. And the top section uses shorter pieces, so we don't need them quite as long as the outside edge, but we need them longer than the middle section. These ones are slightly angled, so this one is facing the outside, and I'm going to add another one in with it to thicken it up. Then I'm going to put one that's more in line with the candles, so that one's going straight up, and then I'm going to angle some inwards so we don't get a really flat shape on the top. We need to still have depth and dimension, and we create that by angling our pieces in different positions. So some towards the outside, some towards the middle. You can have pieces that are shorter and you can have pieces that are a little longer. That creates a really good design that has recession, so your eye will travel downwards and it will give you depth. And then you just keep going in that quite methodical, rhythmic pattern. For those of you who really love to have a design that's symmetric, you might want to start off by placing your flowers in a more patterned way. And we do that on the 5-week online course. So if you're wanting to learn more floral designs and you want to learn them in more detail, then we do have a 5-week course running at the moment, and we look at a circular design similar to this. But I go into that in a lot more detail and I teach it in a slightly different way. And I do try to say in tutorial videos that this is only my way of doing it. You might have been to flower arranging classes and you might have learned a slightly different way. You might have participated in a course somewhere and the design might have been taught to you in a different way. As long as the end design is a good outcome and you're happy with what you've created, then I wouldn't worry too much about the method that you use. Just look for a way that suits you more. I really love this random effect where I'm not overthinking the placement of the greenery, but lots of people find this method untidy and they prefer to have matching pieces on either side of the arrangement. So you do whatever you feel more comfortable with. Now in the trade, this is what we tend to refer to as greening up. And when you're a trainee florist, this is the job that you get when you start in as a trainee florist. This is all you're allowed to do, is to green up a design. And then as you progress and you become more confident, you're allowed to add in the flowers. If you're finding this part a little bit boring, then you can of course wind it on to section where I'm completely finished. But what we're looking at doing is trying to cover as much of that greenery as we possibly can. This is the same method that you would use for creating funeral wreaths, table centres. If you're planning on adding fresh flowers to this and using it as a table centre rather than an Advent ring, then you would probably not put in quite as much greenery as I have here, because you would need to allow a bit of room for your fresh flowers. Now I've noticed that I've got a lot of the limier green on this section here, so the fluffy Pinus Strobus, but I haven't got quite so much in that area there. So I'm going to add in some more there before I add in my berries. I've cut all the greenery to a really similar size. That helps to create a circular design. Just, I think, a couple more pieces and then I'm nearly done. So that's my final few pieces of foliage in place, and I'm quite confident that the majority of my floral foam is completely covered. I needed to make sure that the little plastic holder that's holding my candle into position is also completely covered, because they're quite unsightly if they're left visible. You'll see in the middle, I've got a really abundant choice of greenery, and it's angled at different positions so we don't get that really rigid, solid look. Now what I'm going to do to finish it off is add in my red berries. Now this is an ilex berry, it's the leafless holly berry. If you can't get hold of this, because this really is a florist material, then you can just use ordinary holly. You could use some rose hips if you saved them from the summer, or alternatively, if you want to add in some flowers, you could use roses, spray carnations, you could use some lovely scented freesia if you're using this as a table centre. Make sure that you've removed any berries off the stem end so you can insert them into the foam, and we know then they're not going to fall out. What I love about these is that it connects so nicely with the red candles in the centre. Additionally, an Advent ring would have coloured candles and would be lit on each Sunday leading up to Christmas. Sometimes you have a large white candle in the centre which is lit on Christmas Eve, but you could really adapt this design into your own style. So you could have less greenery and more flowers. You could incorporate maybe some dried flowers that you've saved from the summer. It will be really lovely with the addition of some hydrangeas from the garden. So that's my quite simple version of an Advent ring, just using some red berries and a choice of seasonal foliage. I hope you've enjoyed that one, and it's something that you will be able to copy at home. Don't forget, I've linked the base and the candle holders in the description box at the end. If you're looking to purchase any, you'll find them on Amazon. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so that you'll be told every time I upload a new tutorial. And if you're interested in attending one of the Christmas 5-week online courses, there's one on the website from last year, and there's a new one being added on the 8th of November. So look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.